Vanity of vanities, says the teacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What do people gain from all the toil at which they toil under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. Generations come and go, but the earth, like truth, remains forever. This is the weekend when the United States celebrates the efforts of Christopher Columbus, the last of a series of explorers to discover the North American continent, but the first to have the backing of both church and crown and their accompanying publicity machines. Columbus was sent west across the ocean for all the reasons explorers went anywhere in those days: to find riches and wealth and resources to exploit, to claim new lands for whatever government hired them, and to navigate a shorter route to India and the traders located there. As a subtext to this agenda was a command and blessing by the church. At that time, there was only the Holy Roman Catholic Church, still steeped in the military conquest and expansionism culture of the Holy Roman Empire. The second order of the day, of course, was to civilize and convert to Christianity whatever kinds of savage natives they might encounter. And to that end, both priests and soldiers accompanied the ship's companions. You've heard me say that any culture's foundational story plays a significant role in how that culture behaves and conducts itself. What happened at the beginning sets the tone for events that follow. The wind blows to the south and goes around to the north. Round and round goes the wind, and on its circuits, the wind returns. A year ago yesterday was a busy news day. The news media released the infamous Hollywood Access recording in which the man who is now president bragged about sexually assaulting women and getting away with it because of his fame and power. America recoiled from his words and the message they carried, that women were sexual objects to be consumed by men with power. But make no mistake about it, in the circles where this man grew up, power, wealth, and the privilege they provided permit the behavior that can make polite society wince and look away. There was a time not so long ago when men were broadly understood to be entitled to sexual access to women's bodies for their own entertainment and pleasure. Less than 50 years ago, spousal rape was not illegal. 100 years ago, white men could use women of color in any degrading or dehumanizing way they wanted, largely free of recompense. 150 years ago, white men could kill their enslaved people as punishment for any offense, real or conjured, without fear of punishment. Women, and all people of color, were property, things to be owned and maintained in whatever way the master felt was appropriate. This culture did not spring fresh from the earth when our nation was founded, nor did it emerge as the trade in enslaved African people grew in the American South. The culture of treating some people differently than others came to America by way of an Italian guy on a trip underwritten by the Spanish crown, who was desperately off course for his intended destination. Generations come and go, but the earth, like truth, remains forever. Ecclesiastes is a common reading during the festival of Sukkot. It is a time of taking stock, of celebrating home and the harvest, and the fragility of the system that provides life to all. All streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, there they continue to flow. When Columbus arrived in this hemisphere, he carried with him more than just 90 disgruntled sailors. He brought a culture of imperialism and colonialism, of European and Christian exceptionalism and assumed superiority. People who were not Christians or of European ancestry were simply considered to be less than human, animals even, and available like merchant goods for the consumption of men. When he arrived in Hispaniola, Columbus first made friends with the natives, then captured and enslaved them, bringing some back to Spain as gifts for Ferdinand and Isabella. In return for the gifts and his efforts, the monarchs offered Columbus governorship of the island and its surrounding lands, and a fancy title as Admiral of the Ocean Sea. He was as terrible a governor of land and people as he was sailor, and shortly faced mutinies and rebellions, and he developed a penchant for killing and enslaving the island natives. Columbus came to this hemisphere with the idea of consuming what he found here, and that's what he did. Acquisition and exploitation was the charge he was given by his sponsors, and that's what he set out to do. He brought back fruits and vegetables, musical instruments of the island people, their jewelry and art, and as much of their culture as he could, as much of their culture as he could sell in the royal court of Spain. It is perhaps only slightly ironic that of all the things Columbus brought back with him from the Americas, it was probably the previously unknown strain of syphilis that decimated his crew and then great swaths of Europe around the turn of the 16th century. Eventually, it settled down into more of a chronic ailment that killed people slowly, but those first few years were brutal and deadly. It is perhaps the only real punishment Spain experienced for its colonization efforts. All things are wearisome, more than one can express. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, or the ear filled with hearing. My original thought when considering Columbus Day was to examine the ways in which Europeans have historically raided foreign cultures for their riches and art while doing profound violence to the people of those cultures. This is a topic that often comes up in October when some celebrate Columbus Day and others participate in Indigenous Peoples Day. And American children clamor for whatever is popular Halloween costume of the year. I remember as a child and as an unaware young adult dressing up for parties as a Native American or a gypsy or some other member of a marginalized group. I did not understand then how offensive those images and that behavior are to members of those groups. Today I am more aware, and I look back on those younger years and cringe at what I had done. I struggle with the urge to find every person of color I know and apologize for being an unthinking git when I was 17. But my shame is not particularly helpful to the work of justice, and it is not my friend's responsibility to forgive me so I can feel better. That's my work. The best apology I can offer is to change my behavior and become a solid ally. And so we come to this European-based culture that treats the world like its own grand flea market, where trinkets can be collected and riches exploited without regard for the people whose lives are involved. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. There is nothing new under the sun. Is there a thing of which it is said, "See, this is new"? It has already been in the ages before us. As we look around ourselves in 2017 and we see our nation led by a man whose views of the world are that it is his own personal buffet of pleasures to be consumed, without regard for the human lives involved. Columbus did not discover America. Certainly the First Nations people can attest to that. But for European explorers, the Vikings were here first, and then some other folks, and even another Italian explorer named Vespucci made the trip before Columbus did. He didn't prove that the world was round. Galileo had started that rumor, and by the end of the 15th century, pretty much it was accepted as fact. People didn't have a clear idea how vast the planet was, and so they were not allowing for the entire Western Hemisphere and a couple of continents to be in the way of the Western Passage, but still, Columbus didn't prove anything new and didn't discover anything that hadn't already been known. What happened was he got good publicity. He became popular after the American Revolutionary War, when new Americans were crafting their own national history and English heroes were out of fashion. Columbus was Italian, though, and hired by Spain. Plus, he was kind of lost to history before that because of the whole mutiny thing. So his story could be mostly created out of whole cloth. And they wove in details for texture and character, and voila, America had an early hero. It didn't matter that his bio was complete fiction, that his finances were a mess, and that he failed at managing the riches his sponsors gave to him. He was a good story, as long as you didn't look too closely, and that worked for America. The people of long ago are not remembered, nor will there be any remembrance of people yet to come by those who come after them. Our Unitarian Universalist faith challenges us to live in integrity each day with the ideals and principles we espouse. It's been a rough spell lately to live into that integrity. Our government's leaders seem bent on doing as much harm as possible to the most vulnerable people they purport to serve. Storms, natural disasters, unimaginable violence flood our news feeds and our television screens. How do we embody integrity in a world that seems so devoted to be just the opposite? That we do it the way we do anything, one bite at a time, bit by bit, piece by piece, bird by bird, as Anne Lamott would tell us. Each day we get up and do what we can to speak the truth, even when it scares us. Each day we get up and work to be more aware of our own privileges in this world. Each day we get up and commit to listen more than we talk, to serve more than we demand, and to give more than we receive. Integrity is not about being truthful on your resume. It's much more than that. Integrity is what we do when no one is watching. Integrity is how we behave when we are alone and there are no witnesses to judge. Integrity is about how integrated our values are with our everyday lives. Vanity of vanities, says the teacher. All is vanity. What do people gain from all the toil at which they toil under the sun? Living in integrity is a spiritual practice. To be honest and fair, to be kind and generous, to be true to our word, keep our promises, and keep confidences that are shared with us, speak up when we see injustice happening. All of these things are about making the world a better place, and they cannot be done by any other means than one voice at a time, speaking up, raising up the truth, shining a light into the dark corners, and bringing us all back to a place of wholeness and integrity. May this be our practice and our prayer. Amen.